This is at 519 South Orange Avenue. I believe Mr. Adler had a couple of comments on this. Mr. Adler?
I thought it was a very well-written resolution. It captured what I think was a pretty nuanced set of discussions we had, and I think it was very well written. I don't see any changes to it.
Thank you. Do we have other comments? No other comments?
I did receive, Mr. Chair, a couple of minor typographical type changes from a board member. One was in paragraph 9, very last paragraph of paragraph 9, starts with responding. Cross out the word the and insert the word to, T-O. And a question about the condition number 5 and the phrasing there, I think needs to be discussed because on condition number 5, it was my understanding that the basis for the grant of this D1 use variance was not on the basis that the applicant was inherently beneficial, but rather that the site was particularly well suited. So that the uses which would be precluded there was, well, my initial concern was that not other university uses were being approved, such as classrooms, gymnasiums, etc. Those would have to be excluded. They were not part of the board's approval. But the question would be, if it's based on the site being well suited, are other office uses part of that use variance? In other words, it's not limited to university office uses. It would be for general offices.
Well, that's a discussion we've had in the past, and our understanding is, yes, it would be. That when we're saying it's particularly well suited, then yes, it would be suited for other offices, including tax-paying offices. I don't have any problem with that.
Right, but your point is, do we take out the word university in paragraph 5?
Well, we're saying if the university's using it, it's for, well, if we can take out university, it just means offices only. You can just probably take out that one word.
Okay.
I think the concern is moving forward, should the property be sold
Right.
to a non-university owner, and then general offices not associated with the university would be allowed to occupy that space without coming back to the board for another variance.
And that's what we
And I
established,
think that's
yes.
what the conclusion was.
Yeah,
Okay.
we didn't go with the inherently beneficial, as we
Right.
made it clear.
Okay.
It's a good change.
Okay, with that, may we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the resolution as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. DeScalo,
Yes.
Mr. Polipiano,
Yes?
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Semper,
Yes.
Mr. Adler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Shapiro.
Okay, one other note here, we were sent an email of amended ordinances. One had to do with lot coverage. I want, you all should take a look at that, should be in your inboxes. A lot coverage as far as impervious surfaces go, and then as far as another section having to do with clarification of what they mean by a 10% increase when you put on a deck. These changes were actually results of years ago of our writing
Right.
to the Board of Trustees, and they've acted on them, and I appreciate their doing so you should review those. Okay, so now we move on to Seton Hall University, case 1010, application for completeness, 425 Scotland Road.
Good evening. Nicole Dory, Connell Foley, on behalf of the applicant, Seton Hall University. We received the completeness report, and we just have some minor comments.
So is there anything you all want to start off with before we start marching through the,
Well, I know that you like to go through each item, so I can address, we just really had one minor comment, and I can address that when we get to that item, if that's the way you'd like to proceed.
okay. All right. So let's proceed with going down, and this one I'd like to just march through the items, because this is a bigger case, and I don't want any mistakes made at this juncture that have repercussions down the line. So we have Susan Gruels from Higher Gruel and Associates, their opinions on the checklist and what can be waived and not. So let's move down those. Item number 4, and this was dated October 31st, 2013. So, item number 4, not provided tax collector certification, obviously they're tax exempt. Item number 5, not provided a list of property owners. The suggestion is should submit a certified list minimum 10 days prior to a public hearing. We okay with that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, we will
Okay.
definitely do
Good.
that.
Not provided a deed and affidavit title for lands, no exception, since no lands are being conveyed, so that's irrelevant. The applicant has not submitted a public hearing notification, and hearing notification should be sent 10 days prior.
Yes, we will comply with that.
Item 10, no letter signed by a utility company. Opinion from Gruel is no exception to this granting this waiver for completeness, and required approvals from outside agencies may be a condition of approval.
Yes.
Okay? We're okay with that? On the
Yes.
Okay. Item number 11, not submitted an application to the county planning board since it sits on Scotland Road, a county road, and the recommendation is no exception to the granting of this waiver for completeness only, and obviously required approvals from outside agencies. That could be a condition of approval.
Yes, we will be submitting an application to the county.
Item 12, Essex County Health Department application. Again, approvals may be a condition of our approval. Yes? Item 13, no application to the Hudson Essex Passaic Soil Conservation District. A recommendation is exception could be, you can have this waiver pending conditional approval from these agencies.
Yes.
Item 14, no copies were submitted of DOT or DEP approvals, and this recommendation of granting of waiver for completeness only. Is that okay?
Yes.
Item 15, not submitted a digital copy of the site plan. No exception to granting this waiver for completeness, but a digital copy of the final site plan should be submitted.
It will be provided.
Okay. Item 17, no environmental impact assessment has been done. They have, however, submitted a stormwater management report and drainage drawings for the proposed parking lots. The recommendation from Higher Gruel is do not recommend a waiver. However, we recommend the applicant submit a more targeted environmental impact assessment focused on slopes, drainage, and vegetation, such as trees, and that they submit this at least 10 days prior to a public hearing.
Yes, and this is the one area where we did have a comment. The university will agree to provide the targeted environmental impact assessment. However, I had spoken with Ms. Gruel about this, and she agreed with respect to trees. There's a significant amount of trees on the property. The university in its plans had shown trees only in the area of disturbance. Ms. Gruel was suggesting that perhaps if we outlined the area of no disturbance, then we could not have to identify the trees in that area because those trees will not be impacted. So that's the limited area that we would request a waiver from the board from.
And that's what you suggested, Ms. Gruel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I did. I suggested that that would be a way, if there is a very specific area that is identified where there would be no disturbance, at all, that then you would not have to necessarily, I would recommend that all those trees don't necessarily have to be identified, but any trees outside of that area would.
Okay, is the board okay with that, or, Do you-
Makes sense.
excuse me?
Makes sense to me.
Okay, Mr. Adler's in favor. Any other comments? Okay, that's fine, that
Thank you.
arrangement. Item 20, the applicant has not submitted an affirmative statement in writing indicating conditional uses. No conditional uses are proposed, so that's irrelevant.
Correct.
Item 21, the applicant has not submitted an engineer's cost estimate and recommendation of no exception to this waiver for completeness only.
That's fine.
Item 23, the applicant has not submitted as-built plans or final plates. We take no exception to the granting of this waiver. Okay,
Yes.
we okay with that?
What are the existing conditions going to be based on? There's going to be some drawings that have existing conditions in the package?
Well, as far as like, architectural plans, is that what you're looking for? Or?
No, just in terms of the lot itself. So this is only speaking to architectural? No. Yeah, so just to the lot itself.
I don't believe we provided as-built plans at this point.
You have a survey.
Yes, we have a survey of the property, but we didn't provide architectural plans of the existing buildings, I don't believe.
Well,
Will you be, in terms of the Graves house and changes to the interior of the Graves house, are you going to submit as, current plans of that and then propose changes? Or how will we see the interior changes to that house?
I believe we were going to present that through testimony during the hearings, but we can certainly work with the board if there's additional information that they'd like to see on some sort of plan. I don't think we have a good idea right now of exactly what the changes are going to be. My understanding is that the majority of it is going to be, repairs, minor repairs, and restoring some of the items that were removed. Not any significant structural changes to the property. So, repair, painting, maybe taking down some walls that had been partitioned when the property was converted into a convent.
okay, so Ms. Gruhl, the
Mr.
as-built-
Chairman, might I suggest that when dealing with issues such as parking and things like that, one of the things you need to take a look at is, especially the Graves building is going to be converted to offices, correct?
Yes, that's the reason.
Typically, you look at the number of parking spaces required based on the offices.
That's right. Square footage of
Square
offices,
footage
number of
and office
offices, that's
space,
right.
and the number of people that can inhabit it. Without knowing how the interior of the building is going to be set up, it's very difficult to put a number on how many required parking spaces will be there. So I would suggest that they do at least a preliminary basic floor plan for each of the floors of that building and how it's going to be laid out and how many offices and how much space is going to be devoted to office space as opposed to,
So we can do the
storage,
calculations.
so that the proper calculations can be done in order to determine parking just for that building.
just for that, but do they need to do that for the school building?
For the school building, it's a little bit different. When the ordinance speaks to parking in the university zones, and that would, and it's questionable whether or not that parking requirement would apply to this, or whether there would be a different parking requirement. I know that the engineer, Omlin, I guess Frank Russo, has reviewed the application for completeness, but I think there are going to be questions as to the required parking.
Yes,
Well, if that's the case, then they should, just like they did with the house, with the classroom setting, they should submit, what the office space is, right?
With the office space, and then with the Graves building, yes, the office space, you would take a look at that. It's typically one parking space per 300 square foot
Right.
of net office area. That's the standard for office space, the same standard that was done in the prior application. The school building, though, the classroom building, it's a little bit different. The university zone requires it's 0.25 spaces for each full and part-time student and full and part-time employee. So that gets to the point of how many students are going to be in
Okay.
there. But again, there's a question there because this year it may be 110 students, next year it could be 150 students, and then in which case the parking requirement would change. So I think you need to take a look at it as, well, what's the maximum number of students you could physically put into a building of this size, based on the layout and the proposed improvements. Now, I don't know if there are any proposed improvements to the school interior, changing the classrooms, but I assume there are.
I'm not aware of them at this point. The only change I know to the school building is that they're adding a lobby and I believe an elevator or stairway.
Okay. So, but the number of classrooms, the allowable student population per classroom is something that should be calculated and determined so that the board has a true understanding of how many potential students you can have in the school at, any given time.
So then they should submit a floor plan of the,
Well, if I could just explain, our engineer did do parking calculations, and I'm sure that we could provide those, but
Well,
with respect to the Graves house, I understand with respect to office space that you need to have an understanding as to how many offices there are and what the square footage is, so we can certainly provide that
right,
as part
but
of the calculations.
the parking calculation that was submitted was based on an estimated number of students. But the actual number of students is based on how big the building is and how many people you can squeeze in.
Understood.
So, and we all know things change, over time. And if the student population goes up and the parking is not there, then that will definitely be an issue.
so then there should be some rudimentary as-built plans.
I think there
Yes.
should be a basic,
Existing
layout,
On the basis of which we approve or don't approve whatever
Right.
is requested relative to parking.
Right, it doesn't have to be great detail, you don't need mechanical plans, you don't need electrical plans, you just need basic floor plans that show the layout of the building, what areas will be lobby space, that's not student space, but what areas are going to be classrooms.
Shouldn't the fire department get involved there in case there are problems?
The fire department will get a copy of the application, we'll submit that to them and ask them for their review of the application. They'll typically look at the site, circulation around the site, how do they get in, how do they get the equipment in there, the site plan that was provided shows a lot of driveways, parking lots, a lot of paved areas around the buildings, but a basic floor plan would also be important. When it comes time for them to do the physical improvements to the building, that of course goes through the building department and fire code issues. Those are all addressed later. Assuming the application is approved, once they go for their permits for the improvements, that's when the fire department and fire official get involved for interior improvements and things like
I would
that.
also suggest, is that working? Is it working? Right, well, just
Steve,
keep going.
Are we working here? Is Ms. Gruhl's microphone working?
Okay. I would also suggest that the basic floor plan have dimensions.
Yes.
Square footage.
Oh, yeah.
That not just the basic floor plan without the dimensions. I don't think any of us want to sit there and calculate what the square footage is for rooms. So if that could be
Right.
part of the plans, if the board chooses to
Right.
ask for that.
That information could all be on the zoning table as well.
No, the gross, but I think that what is suggested is that the details of the internal layouts and how that works in the square footage will go to the analysis of the parking. And I
Yeah, I agree.
tend to agree.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, classroom number one is,
15 feet by 15 feet or whatever.
whatever, it's
150.
150 square feet,
Right.
whatever.
Okay.
And then based on that, then provide us with, what is the allowable number of students in a space of that size. And that's how the parking calculation should be determined.
And if the board recalls, if it's office, it's a square footage based upon net. Net. So some of the internal area is not counted towards the parking requirement. So that's important to know.
And the other consideration regarding parking is which standard is to be used,
Well, that's
because that's a gray area.
Well, that's their job. That's the applicant's job, is to
Well-
talk to us about that, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, like I said, if this was in the university zone, it specifically states in the ordinance how many parking spaces you need.
Well, maybe if
But
they're
it's
smart,
not.
they'll analyze it according to both, but I don't want to tell them what to do. To two standards, there's a university standard, and then there's the other zone standard, right? So they can do both if they want to.
Well, the other zone standard is a residential
It's a
zone, which
single
wouldn't allow
family.
any of this. So
Okay,
it's-
well, that's their job. We're asking them what we're requiring for completeness. So we are not granting this waiver. They do need to submit as-built plans, as we discussed, for both the house and the classrooms with the actual offices, a rough outline of those, and the square footage of the various rooms in the buildings.
If I could just comment for just one moment. I understand that the square footage information is necessary to calculate parking. I just don't believe that the university knows exactly what the layout is going to be for each of the buildings at this point in time. So I just want to make the board understand that we'll obviously provide that information for the parking calculations, but just with the caveat that, if we do have adequate parking and we can demonstrate, some of those layouts might change slightly in the future. So I just want to make sure that's understood, that is a possibility.
You'll present that at the actual hearing, sure.
Yes.
And that's not unusual that
Yes.
might happen. Okay, so you understand what we've asked for?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Item 35, the applicant has not submitted information regarding existing critical environmental areas. We recommend a statement from an engineer stating whether critical environmental areas are on the site, and this information should be sent a minimum of 10 days prior to a public hearing.
Yes, this will be included in the environmental impact assessment.
Thank you. Item 36, the applicant has not submitted information regarding all existing trees. We've talked about this. The applicant has identified all 4-inch or greater caliber trees within the area of disturbance. So we took care of this already.
Yes.
Okay. Item 37, the applicant has not submitted any information for existing wells or septic systems. We take no exception to the granting of this waiver for completeness as the site is currently developed. Okay. Any problems with that? We okay here on the board? All right. Item 39, the applicant has not provided a developer's agreement with the village that addresses affordable housing. We take no exception since no housing is proposed. Okay, so that's irrelevant. No utility profiles have been provided on the plans. A, utility systems A and D, the applicant has not provided a notation of correspondence addressing water and sewer flows. We take no exception to granting this for completeness only. Are we okay with that, board? All right?
Yep.
Okay.
What does that mean exactly, for completeness only?
It means, and just to note that these comments, we put this memo together, but in coordination and discussion with Almond, so we received their comments. And these are for purposes of the applicant recognizing that in the substantive review, they will have to address it, or for completeness. No, we recommend that, so does Almond, that this
So-
is not.
Would you say that the applicant would need to supply materials 2 weeks in advance of the meeting then,
10 days
or
prior.
10 days?
They should.
Yeah.
Okay.
With regard to utility profiles?
Yes. There's,
I'm not sure that we've typically done that in the past. I had thought that that was something that was part of resolution compliance, but.
Well, I just don't know,
are you changing utility profiles? You don't know?
I don't know.
right.
So we need to have that information.
That's what Almond suggested for
Okay.
a substantive review. And again, not for completeness, but for a substantive review, that they will need that information.
Okay. Yes, you need to provide this. Will you do this?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, item 49. The applicant has not provided details about existing and proposed right-of-way and easements. The applicant has stated that this requirement does not apply to this application, so of course, recommendation of granting a waiver.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about that.
Yes.
Why don't they apply? Why wouldn't easements and rights-of-way apply if this
If there are,
property?
in fact.
Pardon me?
If there are, in fact, right the way.
Well, of course. If there are, in fact, easements or rights-of-way burdening this property, why wouldn't that apply? Why wouldn't we want to know about that?
I'm not aware of any easements or rights-of-way burdening the
I
property.
guess that's a different question. If there are any, wouldn't they be relevant to the application?
Okay, so I think what you're saying is probably the same thing. We need a statement from you that there are no rights-of-ways or easements. Isn't that
Okay.
what you're saying, Mr. Adler?
Well, I'm asking a question. If council is making a representation after having examined back title and the surveys that there are in fact no easements or rights-of-way burdening this property, that's one thing. To say that I'm not aware of any is a different thing. So I wouldn't waive this unless I had that kind of representation from council.
I can provide a statement in writing once I've confirmed it, but I'm not aware of any at this time.
Okay, so in the meantime, we're not going to grant this waiver.
Right.
Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'll provide that statement 10 days before.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Adler. Item 53, the circulation plan does not include site triangles and profiles on the site plans at each proposed driveway. We recommend that the details be provided on the site plan and be submitted at a minimum 10 days prior to the hearing.
We'll provide the information.
Thank you. Item 57, the applicant has not provided a soil erosion and sediment control plan. The applicant has indicated that it will be submitted prior to the final approval, and the recommendation is granting the waiver for completeness only. Okay, so you all would provide this?
Yes. We
Okay.
will provide it later, yes.
Item 60, the stormwater management basin soil testing within the basin footprint has not been conducted, as well as an indication of the depth to seasonal high water tables in accordance with local ordinance and NJDEP stormwater rules. We take no exception to granting this waiver for completeness only. Okay, so is this something, information you could provide to us at the substantive hearing?
Yes, well, there'll be a testimony on stormwater.
Okay. All right, so that covers the items that are on there. Are there additional items? Well, first of all, I assume when with the as-built plans, we're okay with saying that they can provide it. We may say it's conditionally complete, but we're going to say they're going to have to provide it at the substantive hearing, right? Okay. Other items that we wish to suggest to them that aren't really part of completeness, but that the board might wish to know more information than they presented. Are there other items?
You know, I think one of them has kind of come up already in this question about parking, and I mean, obviously that's going to be a major topic in this hearing. For me, one of the things I'd like to hear about is the impact of moving this parking off the main campus here on the situation we just addressed back at the main campus. I'd like to hear about this not as essentially an independent site, but as part of an overall site plan where the university is basically creating a satellite. And what's the relationship from a parking point of view between the two, and have you considered that?
Okay, we can provide that information.
The second thing that I'll raise now, and that is really, it's not a specific question, but it's something I'd like for your planners to address, which is the university is in a sense creating a sub-university zone on a new campus that stands alone. And I think they're embedded or embodied in our zoning laws is a special university zone which was designed to allow a university to coexist with residential in the best way possible so that we can have hopefully a very vibrant university and vibrant, healthy neighborhood surrounding that without damage between the two. And the university zone was constructed in the best way we could to enable that. And I think there's, a significant planning question to be addressed here about how that same set of concerns are addressed on this new campus. And it's something I'd be looking to hear from the planners about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one other thing I just wanted to mention. In the plan submitted on the front cover, they have this property is located in two separate zones. You have the RA 100, which fronts on Scotland, and then the RA 75, which fronts the back portion of on Vos in that area. The maximum lot coverage, as listed in their schedule, they have as 60%. That would be the maximum lot coverage for a conditional use for a school. But the actual lot coverage allowable in these zones are 30% in the RA 100 zone and 40% in the RA 75 zone. So I believe that means that and the proposed lot coverage in both of those areas is somewhere just under 60%. But I believe both of those are additional variances that the applicant should be requesting because they are not meeting the conditions of the conditional use, so it becomes a variance, a use variance for this application as well. And I believe that because they're exceeding the allowable lot coverage in those zones, those are additional variances that should be requested and presented to the board and justified to the board. Susan, do you agree?
Yes, I do. I do believe that those are additional C variances. And I would, Sal, I don't know whether you're done or not. I didn't mean to. The one thing that the board may want to consider, even though I don't believe it's technically a completeness matter, but it appears that the parking and traffic study could be a little bit more expansive, and that there is, it could be a little bit more detailed and with a little bit more information in it. And if the board believes that that's the case, we certainly could have, as well as Omlin, have a conversation with the applicant about what information would be helpful for expanding that.
I agree, and in particular circulation. I mean, the way it's proposed, there are so many different entrances, driveways, parking areas. It's very odd the way it's laid out. The other issue is there are some parking areas that are proposed in front of the buildings, between the buildings and the street frontage, which is typically something that's not permitted, not allowed. So that's something else that the applicant, should address. I mean, it's not, I agree, it's not necessarily completeness, but it is something that moving forward, the applicant should be prepared to talk about circulation, talk about traffic, talk about, trip generation, things like that. I know that they gave a report estimating, the different times of day that classes will happen, and, these are graduate school classes, so students will be coming and going. But I think that there will be a significant traffic impact to the area, based on the number of students that they can fit into this building, and the fact that this was at one time a high school, which were primarily young students who don't drive, and now being a graduate program with students that will typically be driving to their classes and then driving home.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for both of you for bringing that up. I think you did provide a trip generation study, which is good to start off with, but I'd like to see more detail. This is a significant use variance. You're asking to run a school in the evening, and we'd like to see a little bit more information about over the course of the day where these cars are coming in and going, and just the gross trip generation, at least from what I could see, was not enough. So I would like you to consult with Omlin and hire Gruel if you wish to, and wish to provide more information. Again, you don't have to, but this is also, we've done these long enough So the completeness, this is not completeness, but it will help move the case along further if you know these sorts of things now rather than later.
I would
Yes.
agree. This is, in my opinion, it's probably the single most important impact area for this application, and it should have the most rigorous analysis presented.
Yes, we will certainly work with the board's professionals if there's additional information that the board requires.
And it also occurred to me about lighting. I don't know if there's additional lighting. I didn't pay much attention to that, but that's not in completeness. But obviously, they're right next to the neighbors, and that's going to be a concern of ours, would be where the light spill is, particularly if you're planning to put in new overhead lights, that kind of thing.
Yes, we'll provide testimony on that.
Anything else?
I just note that there's a representation in here that there's a deed restriction, which they're going to be obtaining a statement of declaration that it no longer impacts the property. But I don't think we need that. That doesn't pertain to any requirements that we have, correct? Maybe just for their own reasons?
The deed restrictions are private. Deed restrictions are private land use controls and really not within the jurisdiction of the board. It should act without any deference to them.
Okay, that's what I thought. I saw it representing as part of the application, so I wanted to clarify that I didn't think that we
They
needed
could
that.
be changed by the parties involved, so it's not up to the board to consider them.
So that the board could then potentially rule in any given case that is contradicting a deed restriction, potentially.
That's right.
I agree.
We have anything else to suggest? Okay, nothing else? Do you have any other comments?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your comments.
So the completeness, do we vote on the completeness, or we just by consensus say it's complete? Let's take a roll.
Do we want to talk about this is complete subject to submission of the following? There's some added items, right?
Yes, we'll make a motion. So I'll try this. Make a motion that it's complete based upon the conditions imposed, that they've agreed for the items that we suggested for completeness only, that they will provide these. They've agreed to all of those items. In addition, we're not granting the waiver for the as-built plans. Those need to be provided, and the applicant has agreed to provide those. And then also, on item 49, they will make a statement whether there are issues of right-of-way and easements, a statement
Yes.
representing that. And then, so that's all we need to do for completeness. The rest is voluntary on their part.
Mr. Chairman, one thing, we're referring to the architectural floor plans as as-built plans. I don't know that you want to look at as-built. I think you want to look at proposed layouts.
Okay.
Because an area that may be like the gymnasium now, as-built, is not a classroom, but
Okay.
could in the future become a classroom.
Okay, so proposed.
So I think it has, I think there has to be a
Thank
little
you.
bit more detail than just the as-built. What areas are they proposing to use for classrooms?
Okay.
So that you can do the proper calculation.
Yes, understood.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. DeScala,
Yes.
Mr. Polipiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Semper,
Yes.
Mr. Aller,
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro, and Ms. Warren.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move on to case 1006, Dr. Singla, and I believe their engineer is going to come up because he has another commitment, and we're going to start out with the engineer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Hahn. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Dr. Singla and Ruchi Reality. And as the chairman pointed out, Mr. DeSessa needs to get to East Hanover for another meeting. I'm sure he's already running late. So if it's okay with you, we're going to put him on first.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Oh, sorry. I thought I was. In any event, we're going to put Mr. DeSessa on first to address his plans and any questions you might have so we can excuse him as soon as possible. We have your planner's report that was dated November 1st. I think with respect to landscaping and lighting, she had no comments. So the only thing, I think, where she did have a comment that is on Drew's plans, Mr. DeSessa's, has to do with the garbage enclosure. So I will have Mr. DeSessa address that, explain why that location was selected and what's being proposed there. Mr. DeSessa, please.
Mr. DeSessa, you were previously sworn in this application,
Yes, I was.
and you're still under oath?
I understand.
You understand?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the board has the site plan drawing in front of them, which is titled A1 in the bottom corner. It's a smaller plan. You'll see that we show a proposed trash enclosure in the left rear corner of the existing building. It has a box there with an X in it. We looked at the site. The site is very tight as far as available area to put an outside enclosure. Currently, some of the trash is stored in the rear of the building, adjacent to the parallel parking space there, but providing an enclosure in that area would restrict and possibly eliminate that parking space and also restrict some of the movement down that driveway, that ingress driveway on the right. So looking at the site and its constraints, I placed it in the left rear corner, a 3x5 enclosure, which basically the enclosure is a 6-foot solid board fence. So it's basically a stockade type fence, 6 foot high, which would enclose an area and have the recycling trash containers within that area. It doesn't conflict with parking. It still provides adequate access aisle width in that corner. And the fencing does provide a screen or a buffer so you don't actually see the trash can, so they can be enclosed and then opened up to be emptied or taken out to the street.
And Mr. DeSessa, in your opinion, is there any room there really to add any more buffering around the fence, or is it fairly limited?
It's limited in that that whole area is paved right now, so there's no island or grass or anything really to place landscaping, and I think it would actually be detrimental because it would restrict some vehicle movement, pedestrians in and out, and couldn't be maintained very well.
So that's what we have on the garbage enclosure. Your planner had talked about a designated area with some buffering. We thought we addressed that by designating that area, excuse me, by putting a fence around it. But if there's more that the board wants, my client's certainly willing to hear any suggestions you have.
Ms. Gruhl?
I think in light of the testimony, that appears to be,
That is the buffering.
is
Satisfactory minimally.
limited in
Okay,
terms
but it meets
of
the ordinance.
physical limitations. So, I, based upon the testimony, I would recommend that that's probably sufficient.
Do members of the board have any questions or concerns? No? Okay.
Is it okay if we let Mr. DeSessa go then?
Or would he be speaking about
Planning issue?
any other issues?
Not that I'm aware of. I think the landscaping and the lighting,
Signage? No.
signage, we're going to have Dr. Singla, and we have the architect here this evening who can address those issues. So I think Dr. DeSessa, Mr. DeSessa, I think, is concluded with his testimony. Again, unless you have any other questions.
Are there any other planning comments or testimony that we need? Because I believe Mr. DeSessa was the planner as well.
He was, yeah, and I was under the impression all that was closed last month, that we concluded all that.
Yeah, I don't think we have any issues of planning. It had to do with signage and lighting, the exterior of the building, and the trash.
Garbage, signage, landscaping, and lighting.
And landscaping.
Right, those were the issues.
My only question is, the architect will provide planning testimony if there is going to be any variances associated with signage?
No. I don't think he's qualified.
That's why I asked the question, that's all.
Yeah, I don't think he's qualified, and I don't think we plan on doing that this evening.
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and we had considered that,
So there's no signage variances requested?
No, I mean, as far as, I read the ordinance, I understand your planner's comments. The structure is there. It was a pre-existing structure in the front. We understand that the ordinance requires, if you want to put a new sign on there, you have to get a permit, which my client's willing to do. But if the board is not satisfied with that and they want my client to remove the structure, he's willing to do that.
Or come back to the board?
Or come back to the board, yeah, if he wants to use that. But, yeah, we're not going to push that issue.
All right, so we can let the engineer go then, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any
All right,
public
Drew.
questions?
Any public questions for the engineer? Thank you. Any members from the public
Drive safely to East
have
Hanover.
questions for the engineer? No? Okay. So then we will move on to the issues of the signage and your approach to our planner's concerns.
Yeah, and I guess at this point, we'll bring up Louis Solomoni. He's the architect. I can quickly qualify him as an expert if you like.
Yes, please.
And then we can have him and/or Dr. Singla address those concerns. Would you please give the board the benefit of your experience as an architect?
The name is Louis.
Hold on, Mr. Hahn. Could you please raise your right hand, sir?
Oh, he has to swear you first.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give before this board is the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Louis Salamone, S-A-L-A-M-O-N-E. My office is at 169 Ramapo Valley Road in Oakland, New Jersey.
Louis is spelled?
L-O-U-I-S.
Thank you.
You want to give us his credentials here?
Yes, yeah, I was waiting for
Okay.
your attorney to tell us it was okay to proceed. Mr. Solomoni, would you please briefly give the board the benefit of your experience and licensure as an architect?
I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey and is also in Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and New York. And I've been an architect for well over 45 years and have appeared in front of boards of adjustment and planning boards in many towns in New Jersey.
You've never actually appeared in front of this board, have you?
No, I have not.
But you have appeared in front of other boards?
Yes.
Okay. Unless you have any questions, I would propose him as an expert in the field.
Do we have any questions? No. So we recognize you as an expert in architecture.
Thank you. Do you want to briefly just go through your plans? And then we'll pay particular attention to the signage questions while you're doing that?
We have an easel.
You have an easel that you could use, but then you got to take the microphone with you.
Or bring the easel back here, maybe?
Well, you could do that too, if that's the way you want to do it.
You want to do that? Yeah, we'll sit on the side. Thank you.
Our office was retained to improve the front elevation of the building as well as the remainder of the building on the sides and the rear. And what we've done is we've eliminated all of the horizontal siding that was on the building, which was not very attractive. And we are planning to make the front of the building all brick with some nice brick details on it. The remainder of the building will be stucco, smooth stucco, like a company called Drive It or Stowe would install. And as far as the signage is concerned, we had assumed that that would be done under a separate permit, and therefore that's when that issue would be resolved. And so we were not really planning to state anything about the signage.
Well, I think there's a couple questions, Mr. Salamone. With respect to on your facade, where I think you had a question about the second floor above the windows, where that molding is still shown, that's not for the purpose of accommodating a sign, is it?
No, it's just a decorative element. We wanted to make the brick so much more interesting rather than just running the brick across the building.
Right, and is that similar to the vertical elements between the windows also?
Yes, it is.
So it's going to be similar to that?
Correct.
Molding, okay. And I think, that's the only question you had about that, right?
That's correct.
And then with respect to the signs that are above the first floor windows, you read the comments of the planner? With respect to the square footage, where they're larger than they're permitted to be, we will make those smaller to comply with the ordinance.
Yes, we have to comply with the ordinance of get a separate permit for the signs.
Right, but those areas will be adjusted so that they're not oversized?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I had anything else for Mr. Salamone. I think those were the only questions, really.
Well, there was one, it's more of a practical question in terms of where the sign for the office is located and where it appears as though it's out of sync with where the main entrance to
Okay,
the
right. that's
doctor's office is. That's more for just clarity?
Right. Okay, so there's 3 signs, if you recall, on the front that are
Yes.
shown. The one in the middle was designated for Dr. Single's practice, and I believe you told me the other 2 were going to be for the upstairs tenants, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
On either side.
Okay.
So I think that's the reason they did that, since he was going to be the only tenant on the first floor, and the other 2 signs would be associated with the upstairs.
I
Okay,
guess the
just-
question, if I may, is that the entrance to the doctor's office is on the left side now, correct? As
Yes.
you're facing, it is on the left side. The middle sign, the middle area is for the stairs going upstairs. So it just seems as though it was off as it relates to where your entrance is. That's a question, it's more of a clarification.
And-
I'm not sure that it's...
And just to
really-
take it another step further, second floor businesses are only permitted window signs. They're not allowed wall signs by ordinance.
Well, that makes it easier.
So the signage that can go in, I mean, typically in a building like this, you have the sign ban, which is the area above the first floor windows. Those can only be signs for businesses on the first floor, or if there's a naming of the building or whatever, or the address of the building, like you have the 63 in the middle, on this original drawing, you can just say 63 Valley or something like that. And then you can, if Dr. Singler has the whole first floor, then only his sign can be in that area. The second floor businesses are only allowed window signs, unless you request a variance from the board.
That's fine, yeah. Were you going to say something, sir?
Well, yes, I was about that. I know what the ordinance says. I think that, in my opinion, in this instance, that there is some legitimate reason to provide some relief from that.
Well, the other thing the ordinance allows is a directory sign. So typically, second floor businesses, office-type businesses or whatever, next to the front door, the main entrance, there can be a directory sign next to the door, it's legal, and it can have the name of the business's Suite 203, so people entering the business know where they're going once they go up the stairs. So you can have a directory sign, and there's limitations, to the size and location of that. That's all outlined in the ordinance as well. But if you want to do something other than just window signs for those businesses, then you would have to request a variance for those signs.
Right, and my client indicated he's okay with the window signs, and he's not going to request a variance. He'll only use signs in that area for his practice. So he's okay with that.
Well, it's going to be tenants on the second floor,
There
correct?
are, correct, yes.
So why would you need signs for residential tenants?
Oh, it's not residential,
No, no,
they're
no.
business tenants.
Right, okay, so, all right, so you're going to just put a sign out there, it's going to be centered like it is now, or is that where you're going to keep it?
Yeah, sure, Sandy. Sandy was previously sworn, right, I believe, Mr.
You
Dwight?
still under oath, Doctor?
Thank you very much. So I think what the plan is going to be is, since I am going to be occupying the entire floor, I will maintain the sign, the entire sign band, and have the tenants put signs in the windows for their businesses.
What's going to happen with the sign, the freestanding sign in front?
Well, that's a little bit more of a discussion I'd like to have, because I know my attorney is letting that one go, I think in my mind, maybe a little too quickly, but that's a pre-existing sign, pre-existing board. I'd like to comply with the ordinances to put up a sign on that pre-existing structure, unless the board has a major problem with it. I'm a little confused as to why that sign has to go, given that chances are there was a variance that was applied to actually erect that signboard.
Contrary to my client's opinion, I don't think I let the issue go. I think what I said was we weren't seeking a variance this evening, that my reading of the ordinance was that as long as he sought a permit for the new sign on the existing structure, that might be sufficient. I see your planner's already nodding her head no. But I said, my client, and I thought we addressed this issue, frankly, at the last meeting, and that the board was okay with him using that structure. I think the question came up last time about the ground sign. But I think the way we concluded it, if I'm not mistaken, was that if a variance is determined to be necessary, that he's going to have to reapply for the variance if he can't get the permit. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So that's all we were saying. We weren't seeking the variance now. He'll either seek the variance at a later point if he can't get the permit, or he'll remove it. I mean, that will be his two choices at that point.
Just for clarification, okay, ground signs are permitted when a business structure is not visible from the street, and in this case, the building is set back, the buildings adjacent to them are right up, but I mean, it is visible from the street, but it's set back. The business which is being conducted is one which does not use a business structure, such as operating a parking lot or whatever. A business or professional use occurs in the building which has been modified for such use, but still maintains a residential appearance. So if that was like a home or a home-based business or something like that in a residential district, then that would typically, you can allow a ground sign, and there are limitations on that. And that's pretty much it. Those are the justifications for the ground sign. The sign exists now. I can't tell you if they ever got a variance for it. It's probably been there. It's been there longer than I've been here. I don't know how they got that approved originally, but it is a pre-existing sign. So I don't know if there's an issue with them continuing to use the sign, as long as it meets the conditions. It still has to be, a ground sign. It can't be backlit. It can only be exterior lighting, things like that. Meet the size requirements. Maximum area for a sign is 20 square feet for one side. 40 square feet for both sides. So unless the board has an issue with it, I would suggest that the board either agree that they can continue to use this sign, so then at least it is documented, assuming the application is approved and the variance is granted, at least it's documented that they're allowed to continue using this ground sign. Or if the board is against it, then, perhaps recommend that the applicant, not use the ground sign. But there is a definition as to when ground signs are permitted. And I don't know, I suspect it's because this building was set back at some point in time, they may have been granted a variance, or they may have been given the okay, or it may predate the ordinance itself. I don't know.
So currently, the sign doesn't fit those conditions. the conditions
Well,
don't
it does.
support a sign.
Well, it's
Equivocal.
debatable, because
Okay.
if you have a sign on the building and you're driving down Valley Street, you're not going to see this
Right.
building or the sign on that building.
Right.
Because it's set back. But if you're, but if you're out in the street, you can look and see the building. So the way the ordinance is written is a little unclear.
One concern that I would have is total signage.
That's what I would suggest, that maybe as a way of looking at this.
You're not getting picked up.
Whoops, a way of looking at this is you have X square footage of signage, and you may be able to put it either on the ground sign and a portion on the wall, on the facade, and whatever that is, and you work that out, and that's what the controlling factor is, rather than create a double-up effect and create one where you don't necessarily need to have the potential of sign pollution. as
The-
such.
Yeah, the ordinance allows 1.5 square feet per foot of frontage for the building,
And that's-
for your signage. That's,
Okay.
that's your maximum signage, to a maximum of 200 square feet, which is, that would be for a very large building if you were to do that. So, the building itself, the dimension is...
Well, that's what we calculated in our memo,
Oh.
which was based upon that standard.
Right, so the maximum square footage
Was, what we calculated was 57 square feet. Now, how that 57 square feet is allocated as such, maybe if the doctor wants to use the ground sign and put the names of the tenants there, as well as put his, on the first floor, a sign for his office, medical office, maybe that's the way. But it's just a recommendation, it's a thought. I wanted to throw that out there.
So, depending on how large his sign is in the sign band, is going to affect whether or not he can use the ground sign.
doing it, as Susan says, if you use that as the maximum, then it would. And again, the board has, it's at your discretion at this point, to what extent you want to allow the signage. The building frontage itself is, do you have the
building frontage?
width of the building?
Okay, can we, we're obsessing over this. Do we want to do this? He gets the 57 point something square feet total amount, and if he can, with his facade sign as well as the ground sign, if it comes within that.
Well, we would need to know the dimension of the ground sign as well. If you were going to do that calculation together, the ground sign can't be more than 40 square feet in total. Anyway, so based on the width of the building, if you're only allowed 57 square feet, that means that, can only have a 17 square foot sign on the front of the building.
We don't know what the size of the sign is that's there now, though.
Do you have the dimensions of the ground sign?
got a scale.
We don't.
Scale it because it was an existing building, so I really, I'm not telling you exactly the building.
No, on the ground sign.
No, do you know, the ground sign, the size of it?
Okay, how about this, that they get 57 square feet total between the ground sign and the facade sign, and the ground sign can't be more than 40 square feet. Well, that's what's allowed, right? Can you put a 40 square foot ground sign on something like that?
The only caveat to that is when you look at the 1.5 square feet of signage per frontage, that's in the definition of wall signs. In the definition of ground signs, it's the 40 square feet maximum, 20 for each side.
How big is the existing ground sign?
Well, we don't know what they don't have those dimensions.
Approximately,
I would say approximately the approximate size of the ground sign is 6 feet by 6 feet. It is a perfect square. It's just, I would say 6 feet by 6 feet is the actual ground sign right now.
So it's 70 some odd square
So you're
feet.
talking about approximately 70 square feet of total signage. available just on the ground sign.
6 feet by 6 feet is 36.
Right, but times two, because you have the front and back.
Is that the way it works, front and back? Okay. So he's already overage. So that's a big sign. So what do we want to do?
Well, Susan, what's the purpose of the, or Sal, what's the purpose or intention of these sign limitations in the ordinance? And is there a reason for them to be varied?
The purpose? The purpose is not to have an excessive amount of signage to provide identification, but not to over-sign as such. And that is, and there are different kinds of signs, and it's understood that there's some type of existing signage out there, ground sign, but that's the purpose of what the signage limitation is.
I'm not disposed to give a variance for signage. This is, it's not essential to the operation. They can comply with the ordinance on signage. That's what everybody else does, and he's just got to make it work. That's the way I tend to view it. I see no reason to grant a variance, but if others disagree.
And what that would mean would be a total of 57 square feet on the building, based on the width of the building, plus a maximum of 40 square feet on the ground sign?
No.
Is it plus? No.
It's
The
57.
ground sign is simply,
You can do it that way.
I'm sorry?
You can do it that way.
Yeah. That's, so if, Rusty, I just want to understand what it means if we say no variance. It doesn't mean no signage, right?
No.
It means a maximum of 57 square feet on the building is allowed without a variance? Yes?
Correct.
Okay.
It is.
And under the first condition of the ordinance about ground signs, assuming and maybe we should say this positively, that the building is set back and therefore not visible, a ground sign is allowed, and it has a maximum size of
40 square feet.
Right, and so I think that assuming we say that, we say it's covered by the first condition on ground signs, then what no variance would mean is 57 square foot maximum on the building and a maximum ground sign of what the ordinance says.
I think the board would have to come to that conclusion. I don't necessarily recommend that first condition under ground sign is met. And so, but that's the board's decision as to how that goes.
Do we think it's met?
I don't think it's met. I think that's more where you have something like the workout studio in the back of where Cafe Arugula was. I mean, something like that. That can't be seen from the street. And so, I mean, I'm not talking about that you would put a sign on South Orange Avenue, but it can't be seen. This can be seen from the street. It's set back a little, but it can be seen from the street. And the signs on the front of the building are going to be obvious to anybody. So I don't think the first condition is met.
Thank you. Other thoughts on that? Actually, I agree with Mr. Adler. He's going to have a nice sign up front and center on the building. That's all you really need. And otherwise, I don't think the conditions are met. But any other thoughts on that? Disagree?
It's sad that the zoning code isn't explicit about this particular issue of combining a sign, freestanding sign with wall signage, because people could really stack that stuff up, and we could use an interpretation on that. And I don't know if the board is the one to do that, but I think that yeah, either one sign or the other would be sufficient. I believe it or not, I think that the freestanding sign is a better choice for the property owner because they're catching people that are driving by. It's very clear where their building is. But yeah, I think that excessive signage is a problem, and it's something that we don't want, and we should try to avoid it if we can.
Well, I think the other issue with the visibility is the landscaping, right? So I like the idea of what I'm seeing from landscaping, but I think that's going to, obscure seeing the building.
I think the landscaping's going to obscure the building.
I don't know, we're talking about,
I might be able to make this easier for you all. My client just said he'll take it out, the ground sign. Because I think the point that was just made, he agrees. We weren't thinking about that, but I think the landscaping will obscure it to a certain degree. And while I agree that, generally speaking, the ground sign may have been a better choice with the landscaping, I don't know that it really is a better choice ultimately. Although I do agree, people driving by, it's probably easier to see, but with the landscaping, you may not see it. So, yeah, he'll remove it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. The last thing to talk about is the lighting. Any discussion there? They have the lumen lines. I'm sure there's a technical word for that. They've outlined. And they talked about the type of lighting that they're providing. Do we have any questions about that? Or do y'all have anything to say about that? It's on, where is it here? It's T101.
I really appreciate the ISO line drawing, which makes it very clear that there's no leakage of light beyond the property line.
Thank you. We have other questions? No?
Yep.
Yes?
No.
All right, have we dealt with the lighting?
Lighting, landscaping, signage, yardage?
Yeah, I assume that the landscaping, we're okay with the landscaping. I think it's very nicely done. So, we have I guess it's now, do y'all have anything else to talk about?
No, that's all we have. Thank you.
Do members of the public have any questions? No? Okay, so now we discuss among ourselves. How are we disposed towards this application?
I think the applicant has addressed all of our concerns, and I think the project looks quite good now.
I agree. It looks, it's improved from what it was. We've nailed down the uncertainties, and so you did a good job at that. I think it looks nice. I'm quite willing to approve this. Any other comments? Okay, so may we have a motion? Mr. Parlapiano, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the conditions here. So, I certainly move that we approve the application, subject to the building, subject to the signage. No, there's no subject to, right? Because it's simply going to comply with the ordinance at this point. So there's no condition. Right?
No, we don't have any conditions on this one, I don't think.
Subject, well,
Removing the ground sign.
They said they will remove
right,
the
so
sign.
subject to removing the ground sign and complying with the other sign ordinances, and the revised drawings, I move that we approve the motion.
Second. I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking through my notes to see if we had any other conditions, and I had a question from the first evening. I think it was from the Hiram Rule letter about sods or shrubs to be approved. Was that resolved in there? Sods or shrubs? There was a question raised during the first hearing about part of the landscaping. I think
they've addressed.
Is that addressed?
They've addressed that. They submitted a new landscape plan, and we looked at it, and in our opinion, it was sufficient.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Jetta?
Mrs. Escala?
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Semper?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes.
And Ms. Whalen?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, shall we take a brief break here, and then we're going to go into the next case, which I'm hoping won't take too long. We'll take a 5 to 10 minute break.
I will definitely do that. Whoops, I'll let you go through there, and I will get out of the way here, and we'll walk down.
build your infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, just
You do all your wiring.
He has a friend that used to do cabling.
Because one of the things that we can see with the
Yeah.
I just think it's really, it's very complicated. It's a very complicated piece of
Just working on it. It takes a while to get the contract. I have my contract in place now.
Susan just told me
Go
that
through like
originally
different vetting processes.
they were looking at the fire.
Set up.
Well, that's not going to happen. I mean, is that
Not as a condition.
Not much.
They're recognizing there's a significant difference between the use that's there now and allowed in zones.
I mean, we try to have it both ways sometimes. So you know whether or not they're actually purchasing property.
It looks like it.
So as I was waiting for the elevator, I saw you rounding up the stairs. And that's where you look like that, I look like this.
Okay, let's go. Let's come on back in. Let's get back in session. Hello. Ready to go? Okay. We're back in session. The next case we're going to hear is case 1007, William and Janet Perlman at 267 Richmond Avenue. This is a application for a C variance to build a one-story addition in the rear yard. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm the architect, Steve Majewski, of Majewski Jones Architects, and the homeowner, Mr. and Mrs. Perlman, are here. They're prepared to make an opening statement, and if that's acceptable, we could continue that way, but I guess we need to be sworn in first. Stand up.
Please raise your right hand, and do you swear or affirm? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give to this board this evening is the whole truth?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
You're both swearing at the same time, I see. Okay, please state your name and addresses for the record.
I'm Janet Perlman. I live at 267 Richmond Avenue in South Orange.
Stephen Majewski, principal of Majewski Jones Architects at 20 Valley Street in South Orange.
He's presenting himself as an expert.
Yes.
So we need to hear your bona fides.
I've been in the field of architecture since I graduated in 1976 for 37 years. I've been the principal of Majewski Jones Architects since 1998. I've been doing mostly residential in my career, but I've done quite a bit of other restaurants and hotels and schools. I've also appeared before this board about 6 times to my knowledge at this point. I've been accepted by the board before.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Majewski?
No.
So we recognize you're an expert in architecture.
Thank you. Before you this evening, we are asking for variance to construct a one-story addition in the rear yard, which will be a continuance of an existing one-story in the back of this house. And by constructing that, we will come in violation of the section of the ordinance that requires a 20-foot setback between the principal structure and an accessory structure in the rear yard. Currently, the garage that we're getting too close to is about only 20 feet at this point, and we're going to go straight back and we'll come to about 9 feet. And I'll give further testimony about that and some detail related to the planner's reports and other aspects so that you can evaluate this project, but I believe Mrs. Perlman would like to address the board first.
I do have a short statement. I'm Janet Perlman. I'm here this evening on behalf of myself and my husband, Bill. I've lived in this area all my life. I went to school here, graduated from Columbia High. When Bill and I got married 46 years ago, we knew that South Orange was where we wanted to live, and we found the perfect house for us. We still live in that house on Richmond Avenue that we bought in 1968, 45 years ago. We brought up 2 daughters there, both of whom also graduated from Columbia High. One of our daughters now lives out of state, but because of difficult circumstances, our other daughter, Joanna, lives with us, along with her twins, our grandchildren, Nathan and Eliana, who have lived with us since their birth 9 years ago. We are a rarity in today's fractured world, a blended family of 3 generations sharing our lives under the same roof. But the house under that roof is now too small for us. After sharing a room for 8 years, the twins, a boy and a girl, each needs a bedroom of his or her own. But more important, Bill and I aren't getting any younger, and the stairs are getting harder. Over the past few years, most of our friends have moved into active adult community. But because of our circumstances, we and our 3-generational family very much want and need to stay in our home and in our town, where we have roots in the school, the neighborhood, our temple, and our community. Our daughter is a Brownie leader, teaches at Charity Fellow Israel, volunteers at the library at the Twins School. Bill and I were among the founding members years ago of South Orange Neighbors and have both served on the board of Charity Fellow Israel. Bill is vice president. Today, Bill is a steadfast volunteer and sometimes house manager at SOPAC. Granting us a variance would enable Bill and me to have a first-floor bedroom and ease our lives, while freeing up a room on the 2nd floor so that our daughter and the twins can each have a bedroom of their own. This is our town. This is where Bill and I started our lives together, and with your help, this is where we will be able to stay and someday attend our grandchildren's graduation from Columbia High School. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for the homeowner at this time?
Have any questions?
I think she's basically addressed the discussion, which more discussion can happen further about the need for this addition, which I'll also talk to. When the Perlmans approached me, I
Wait, let me
evaluated-
ask, see, does the public have any questions of Ms. Perlman? No. Thank you. Go ahead.
When Mr. and Mrs. Perlman approached me, I evaluated their program and their request, and also I then went into the design phase where I would also take this property and design an addition renovation that I felt would also be an asset to the home itself, an asset to the neighborhood, would be useful for future homeowners and not just particular to this homeowner, which is one of the criteria required to grant a variance, that we would be enhancing the neighborhood, enhancing the property, and providing something that's not just unique only to this homeowner. And I'll talk to that design aspect in a little while more directly. I just want to introduce some of the items I have in case we need to use them and if they need to be marked into evidence. I don't know if these need to be marked into evidence because the boards I have of the white drawings are the exact drawings that you have
We're going to
before
mark those,
you.
please, A1. That's the board, that's the plan submitted?
These are the plans submitted to the board,
We're
which
going to
is
mark those
also...
A1?
Sure. The drawing noted as A1 itself on our title block are the architectural plans, which you have as the second sheet in the initial submission, which show the house with the addition and the elevations of the exterior. You also have PLT1, which is the initial plot plan that shows the area map and existing conditions of the house in the rear, and it shows the property site plan before the addition and after the addition, and it also has a copy of the zoning calculations that are also in the application package.
Those 2 sheets are dated September 5th, right?
That's correct, and you have a supplemental sheet called PLT2 that was provided at the request of the board that shows the 2 adjacent properties with their location of their structures, the homes, and the other structures that are in the backyard, which happen to be decks, and their 2-car garages. And I went out and measured...
That's dated October 31st.
That's correct. I went out and measured these myself and prepared this plot, all these drawings myself. I also have 2 photo boards, which you may want to mark.
Okay. Those are boards having a total of, how many pictures?
I have two boards. The first board says Perlman Residence with the address, and it shows the subject property in the back, the large photos, and it has 4 photos showing the subject property and the adjacent properties from the street.
Are those the same as what was attached?
There may be some photos in that attachment, but they're supplemental photos.
Okay, so we're going to mark that board, which has 8 photos as A2.
I could pass that around if the board wants now, or I could wait until I talk about it. Does anybody? And I have one more smaller photo board that shows the properties on the left side marked as 271 Richmond Avenue, and on the right side, 263 Richmond Avenue. It shows some views related to the adjacent properties specific and their backyards for our discussion also. There's 6 photos on that.
We'll mark that as A3.
As related to the specific project that we designed, this lot has some initial aspects of it that has actually caused us to require this variance. It's one of 3 lots that are unusually large on this street in Richmond. This lot and the 2 adjacent, one on each side, are extra large from the zone. They're actually about double the size of the required area for the zone. But the houses, the homes on those lots are built even with the existing streetscape of the other homes. Normal, they're all set back about the same amount, about 30 feet, and they all have detached garages in the backyard. Now, based on the way detached garages, which have a long history in South Orange and Maplewood, are being built, they're put relatively close to the home so that you don't have to walk a long distance in the inclement weather. It's also that you want to keep more of your backyard free of pavement, like driveways and hard surface that doesn't service the family. So when this house was built, I believe in 1927, the garage was placed in that position, which essentially cut off the back half of the lot at that point. And when the back half of the lot was cut off, and the new ordinance, which is relatively new, we don't seem to know the year when this aspect was put into place about the distance between the principal residence and the detached structures. This garage was placed there, and even though you only need a 5,000 square foot lot to develop, we have 10,000, and we essentially can't develop the lot to its fullest extent. Its location is limiting us. And I'll get a little more specific about that later. But what we did was we also tried to, when I approached the Perlmans about the design, I had other suggestions on trying to accommodate their need and placing this addition in another place or developing some other areas. So when you look at the architectural plans, which is sheet A1, the kitchen occupies the rear one-story section that exists now on the home. And when you look at that, the kitchen's not very large. It had a small lavatory actually existed where we're proposing an expanded, slightly larger bathroom. And from that point, you actually had to go down the basement stairs to exit to use the backyard. So I talked to them about other ways to possibly design this addition and avoid the variance. So I talked about trying to put an addition in the L corner of this and get a room that was usable and still avoid the variance. So I tried to place it, no matter what I did, because the corner was already at about 20 feet, 3 inches, I believe, out of diagonal to the garage. No matter what I did, it still got closer to the garage than the 20 feet. So I couldn't really design an addition that was more than maybe 10 by 10, and it wasn't going to accomplish anything for the homeowners. Also, part of that was going to cut the basement off from accessing the back of the lot, because the addition was going to be where you actually exit the back of the building. So building an addition in this location, such as a bedroom or any other kind of structure, was going to require the variance no matter what we did, and also it was going to have an odd shape. It could have been triangular or trapezoidal, I guess. It was not going to be an addition that would be successful. So it seemed like the best place to put it was to the rear. So when we designed it, what we were trying to do to address the program was to gain a 3/4 bath. We only added a shower, we didn't add a tub, and we were trying to add a bedroom structure that would satisfy the program that they were talking about, where they would be able to continue to live into this house into older years and also help their daughter out at this time. And I also suggested to them that even though they would be using it as a bedroom, future homeowners could use this as a family room. It would service the needs of other homeowners in the future, not just specific to their needs. Also, we then talked about a small deck, exit deck to the rear, because that would make sense of how we would get to the backyard and make this a more successful architectural solution for this home. To have to continue to go out the side door of the kitchen down towards the basement through a rustic kind of an unfinished space and then exit was not going to be a successful and a good architectural solution for this home. So we talked about it, and we got an unroofed porch to the back. Now, this design, in order to avoid the side yard, which is required to be a minimum of 4 feet, 2 inches for this lot, because it's 50 feet wide, so we need the minimum of 4 feet, and the extra 2 inches. We basically stay at about 4 feet 4 inches, so we're meeting the requirements for that and maintaining the passageway on the side. It ends up putting the addition about 9 feet from the existing garage. So then we also got into a discussion when I reviewed the zoning in depth and went with Mr. Renda to discuss it. We were trying to figure out, I think, what this part of the ordinance is trying to achieve. Now, part of that aspect that was given to us was that for fire safety. Well, for fire safety, the existing ordinance does allow principal buildings to come within 8 feet of each other, because you're only required to have 4 feet separation on a minimum lot size. So we're actually exceeding that by about a foot. We're also only putting in a 1-story structure. Part of my discussion with the Perlmans was if we were going to put back a 2-story structure into this area, I would not likely myself to take that request to the board, because I think that would be imposing. We're only asking for a 1-story structure. We're way significantly under the height requirement for the zone. It's only 1 story. It's probably about 15 or 16 feet tall rather than the 30 feet that were allowed. And so I felt it was a reasonable request, and we're addressing that. We don't feel that it's creating any fire condition that's unsafe. And also there was a review by the fire marshal, city fire chief and fire official that you have as part of the that he took no exception with this. So I felt that we got beyond feeling that we've created a fire condition where you wouldn't be able to fight a fire successfully around this building. So I says, well, what other aspect of this requirement in the ordinance might it be trying to address? Because it seems, I'm not going to say it's frivolous. It's not frivolous. It's just it's a requirement. There's got to be a background behind it. My opinion about the background behind it is that I think what it's trying to do is take the situation on smaller lots that meet the zone requirements at its minimum and try to stop occupying the rear yard with structures so much and creating an imposition on your neighbors. Well, here we have the 3 lots that are adjacent to each other that are quite a bit in excess. So we're not actually creating where we're taking a situation where we're taking away a lot of light, a lot of feeling like there's mass structures imposing on your neighbor. We have oversized lots and pretty good sized yards on both adjacent properties. Then there was another aspect of the ordinance that I've recognized working in these towns for the last 37 years, is that I've run into a lot of situations where, going back to where I would be asked to create a structure that came to this corner of the house on the left and squared it off so I would be 20 feet from the structure. It would render one side of the garage basically unusable because you couldn't get the car around the corner of an addition that would be allowed and into the garage successfully. It would make it too tight to the garage, and I think that's one of the aspects of this ordinance requirement that it was trying to get to start, to prevent it so that a homeowner could create an addition or an extension on their home and prevent using the garage properly like it's intended to be used. And in this case, it's a two-car garage. So if an addition was to be put that complied with the 20-foot setback, in that manner, we would still meet all the coverage calculations and the setback requirements, but I would dare someone to be able to use this side of the garage successfully at all times and be able to get around it. I've seen quite a few homes in South Orange and Maplewood, which is a similar community, that would be a problem. And here, I think that's part of what this ordinance aspect is trying to address. And that's one of the reasons that I feel that it's pushing us to this point where we have to ask for a variance, because it wants this condition to be evaluated on its own merits. So I think that's essentially where we come down to in trying to evaluate this variance. Because if you look at all the other zoning requirements, we meet everything with the setbacks, we meet the height, we even meet the coverage by a few percentage points. We're under, I believe we're like 36%, and we can go to 40. And that's even without taking the extra aspect in the zoning that was added a few years ago where you could have more coverage if you added dry wells to the lot. We meet the coverage without having to do that at this point. That leaves about 400 square feet that could be developed. Now, and going back to the review by the engineer, I'm sorry, by the planner, it asked me to address a couple things, I believe, and I think I did that. What I touched on earlier was that the lot is about double size, but because of the location of the garage, we're not actually able to use it to its full extent. We can use it for percentage, we meet it, we comply, but yet this single part of the ordinance is causing us to have to ask for the variance at this point. Whereas if the garage was 10 feet back more, we would probably not be before this board. So that would be an undue hardship because it's kind of stopping us from developing it to where we're asking it to develop it to. We wouldn't be able to enjoy the advantage of having the larger lot that more taxes are paid for, and it's sort of restricting us. And also I touched on the point where we're actually about the same, a little bit more than the distance required between two principal buildings. The two principal buildings on opposing lots could go to 8 feet from each other. And in this case, we actually have 9. We also maintain that amount from the other properties. And when I provided the second plot plan, PLT2, and showed the adjacent structures on the other lots, you can see that on the left side, the garage that's built for that home has a deck that's close. It's been there a long time. It probably predates this requirement in the ordinance. They're about 9 feet 9. We still stay about almost 13 feet from the deck on the other lot. But the interesting thing that came to my mind when I was asked to show this and evaluate it was, if we didn't need the requirement for our distance to the garage, it wouldn't matter where the structures were on the adjacent lot. There's nothing in the ordinance that I believe addresses your neighbors. So if you comply, we could put our house 4 feet from their garage as long as we complied on our lot. So I think it's kind of an interesting part of the ordinance where you almost can't legislate and think about the rules for your neighbor and how you relate to your neighbor as long as you comply on your lot. Well, here we are, we basically comply except for this little aspect of the ordinance, but we comply with everything else. So I think we've asked for reasonable relief on this with a reasonable solution by keeping it down to 1 story, not 2 stories. It's fire safe from, actually if it's a bedroom, it's better to exit from this first floor addition than ask them to develop their attic, which I consider a higher hazard for fire safety and egress. So I think this addresses that aspect. I don't think that this stops and inhibits any access or to the garage, and it doesn't diminish using the lot there. And I believe it leaves a nice large backyard for future to be able to enjoy this in this property, which is similar to the lot on the right. and is also similar to the lot on the left. They have large rear backyards, and so I think that basically covers most of what I feel I need to address. So if there are any questions, I can address them specifically.
Okay, do members of the board have any questions for Mr. Majewski? Mr. Adler?
Sir, on DOT 2, you show a change in the east side setback.
I'm sorry, a change in the...
The east side setback.
Oh, that it shows 4'6"?
To 4'2".
Yeah, there was I think there was a comment on that to clarify the setbacks. There is a survey attached to the application at the back. If you look at there's a legal size sheet with a survey marked up with red, maybe that can help clarify the setbacks relief that's required. On the old survey, it shows that the house, I set the house on the lot according to these numbers, 5.36 at the existing house in the rear and 4.95 at the existing house in the front. I placed the house that way and drew it, and I believe the correct amount is about 4 feet 2 inches is the requested variance. I think the house tips a little bit away from the property line, and that's why when I drew it, it came out as 4'6". But at the front of the addition, closer to the street of that portion of the addition, it gets a little bit closer, and that's why there's a difference in the numbers. So in order to keep it so that the variance is covered correctly, the minimum required for the zone is the 4 feet 2, and that's, we would not go closer than what the requirement is to not need a variance for the side setback. But the building does seem to tip a little bit away from the lot line. That's why there's a difference in the numbers.
And how many bedrooms are upstairs now?
I believe it's 3. It's 3.
Is the attic finished at all?
No.
And you said that you didn't design a two-story structure because that would be imposing on the board. Why would that be?
Well, not on the board. I felt it would be imposing on the lot.
Okay, why would that be?
Well, there's two aspects here. One is a second story over the existing first story of the kitchen. When you go up the stairs in the house, it's a switchback stair. You get to the top of the stairs, and the natural thing to do is turn to your right, and that would be the way you access the addition. See if I can indicate that. With the stairs in the middle, you would come up, you would turn to your right to go over the existing footprint. The problem is that's where the developed bathroom is. The bathroom is in the way of creating a corridor to get to the place where you could stack the additions. Otherwise, I might have suggested try to put the bedroom on the second floor here. But you get to the top and you can't. That's where the bathroom is. The bedrooms are the other direction. And then you'd have to take away space inside the bedroom on this side in order to create an addition that goes over the top. And then also, the bedrooms don't cover the whole footprint on the house. See, the bedrooms only go partially to this side. So the bedroom would have to then start getting bigger there to create a corridor, would add a lot more cost to it, and it wouldn't be practical for them to accomplish this in that way. But the primary reason was we couldn't get through the bathroom, which is finished and developed and difficult to move. We couldn't get over the top. So that's why I left this a one-story. So I was essentially referring to, I didn't really want to develop a two-story on the existing footprint, and I would hesitate. If I was asked to put a two-story back here, not that it would be wrong architecturally, I could do something, but I felt I didn't want to ask for that as a variance aspect if I was asked to, but it wasn't necessary because the program wasn't getting that large. It was going to be way beyond what we were trying to accomplish here. But I felt comfortable proposing this because I feel that we would create a structure that homeowners in the future could use a different way, besides just what the Perlmans need to accomplish.
Isn't another advantage of the proposed structure at the rear of the house, that it provides an element of privacy for whoever might occupy that as a bedroom with an adjacent bath without being up on the second floor where the other bedrooms are.
Absolutely. It's sort of, I wouldn't say it creates a full mother-daughter situation, but it
provides
does
a-
give a separate living space. And we have families that are being created in very different ways and combinations of ways, as the Perlman suggested.
I can see that.
And it can address that. And there's also addresses the aspect where we feel that our housing stock in some of the towns is forcing senior citizens to leave the towns because they can't keep occupying their homes. And I'm starting to get to that point myself here, and it's like, I live in a ranch. I'm lucky. I talk to my wife about it all the time. As long as we can keep affording to live there, we have the perfect solution, and our children can keep coming to see us. And I think we're creating a situation where a family can expand, as the Perlman suggested, and we have a place that they could stay in this if they can't get up the stairs. And I think it brings into our housing stock an aspect that's valuable, because that person does not have to move down to the Toms River area to get one floor living. We'll be creating a situation that accomplishes addressing many family situations.
Other questions? Ms. Grohl, you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rinda?
The only question is regarding the existing shed behind the garage. Is that attached to the garage?
It's touching it. I don't know if it's screwed into it.
It's not, okay.
I would assume it's not.
And it's
prefab.
It's just a prefab shed, okay. The ordinance does require a 10-foot setback between accessory structures, so technically that's in violation. So, I mean, it should probably be located and shifted back, unless you want to, I'm sorry, but I have to point that out. Is it on a slab, or is it just sitting on the ground?
Can we ask for a variance for that, so
I
the
don't
day it
think
needs the replacement? It is an existing condition. I don't feel that it's harmful to any situation.
It's existing, but I don't, and most likely it's less than 10 by 10, so a permit was probably never, a permit isn't required for that, so when it was put up, and the question was never asked, but technically it should be 10 feet away from the garage. I just,
If a permit's not required, does it really have to comply with the ordinance then?
it's still an accessory structure.
I understand that, yeah. I don't think it's, is the intent of the ordinance to try to prevent a fire hazard?
I didn't write the ordinance, so I can't tell you what the intent
If
is,
it's,
but I can.
I don't think it's causing any, it's a non-combustible type structure. I guess it's plastic. I guess theoretically you could ignite it. But I don't think it's creating any high hazard on the site. The building code addresses the size of buildings and whether they are a fire hazard. When buildings are close to each other, the building code, it used to have a specific 10-foot number in there of separation, but now it just says if the buildings are close to each other, you have to take their area in totality as to whether it meets fire safety. So for a single-family residence, a footprint of 4,800 square feet is considered the lowest hazard for a residence, and you can go to 2 stories plus a habitable attic. If you take this house plus the garage, plus the shed, it's significantly under what's considered a fire hazard of 4,800 square feet. It's probably not even 3,000. It's probably about 2,000 square feet.
I don't see us granting a variance for this. On the other hand, it's not part of the application. I don't think we need to address it at this point. If it comes up for a neighbor complains or a code violation comes up, then it could be addressed that way. You've warned them. It's their job to act accordingly, right?
I think at this point, it's the zoning enforcement officer's duty to act accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's the zoning officer's job at this point, because I'm not disposed to grant a variance for it. So you've been told that it needs to go, and you decide if you're going to get rid of it or not. I mean, what am I missing here?
Well, I haven't seen anything. If they want to leave, technically it's in violation.
Right.
If they want to leave it there, now's the time to ask for you guys to say
Well-
it's okay, because they're here before a variance. And if not, then it
Well, they
should be
could,
relocated.
right, I understand, they could do that. I'm just coming out right now and saying, other people can disagree. Do you all want to ask for a variance for that?
If it's attached, it's an extension to that building, and it would require a building permit to have put that there. And I don't know if a building permit was issued to put an addition on the garage.
I don't think it causes any other violation. It meets the square footage max. It's in the calculation for square footage for the lot.
No, I'm not.
It's set
no,
back from the
it's-
side, so I don't think it's a violation.
It's just the distance
of that.
between the two structures, by ordinance, should be 10 feet. That's,
Either attach it, or it could be
If it's
taken and made a permanent structure on the
if
garage
it's
and apply for a
attached, if it's
permit.
attached to the garage, though, you would need a building permit to attach it to the garage.
Okay, they'll approach it through the permit process,
Okay,
or move it.
okay,
Sounds reasonable.
all right. We have other, Mr. Rin, did you have any other concerns or questions?
No.
Thank you. Do members of the public have any questions for Mr. Majeski? None? Okay. Is that your case?
I believe it is. Do I need to summarize again? I think I spoke
You tell
pretty...
me, do you need to?
I believe I spoke pretty well to meeting the requirements for the C1 variance. I don't believe it causes any detriment to the community or the neighborhood. I believe it's an asset to this house, and I believe it to the neighborhood.
You're arguing it's a hardship variance? C1 variance?
It's a hardship by the placement of where the garage was originally on this lot and the development of the lot in the past.
But you were I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were suggesting that it would benefit other homeowners.
That's correct.
Also, so are you saying it's also a C2 variance?
That's correct. It has no negative impact on the neighborhood, doesn't affect the streetscape. It's an asset in all aspects, and it addresses, I believe, the concerns of the board, and there were no concerns by the fire marshal. I believe it's a reasonable request, and I believe that's our case.
The concerns by the fire marshal, that's what we received. Did you receive that letter?
Yes, it says there was no concerns.
Okay, right. Okay. We received that also. So that's something we need to make sure we're aware of. That, again, it didn't articulate. Still, we don't know from the fire marshal after all these years a
Why?
reason from the fire marshal himself if they had any about this ordinance. I get your supposition is probably as good as any I've heard as to the reason this ordinance exists. But in any case, the fire marshal didn't have a problem with it.
Exactly. I think it would be beneficial to try to get a better interpretation. I believe a planning board could give an interpretation of this aspect as to why it's in place, because it has come before this board quite a few times, I suspect.
Then the zoning board interprets the ordinance. Planning board will interpret if the question comes up in an application before it.
Okay.
But otherwise, the zoning officer gets first crack. If they don't like that, they can go to the Board of Adjustment here.
I think he means by interpretation of what the purpose of the ordinance is, not the reading of the ordinance.
Well,
There is no interpretation of the purpose. It's just whatever they say it is.
Right.
Yeah. Well, then the way I started this project was I feel that the most important aspect is it maintains use of the structure it's trying to protect. I believe it's trying to protect a detached garage from losing its use so that you can't get into it. Because if you could put the building within 10 feet, it's unlikely you could get the car in the garage unless it's one car garage and a straight shot in. So I think that's a primary thing. And the secondary is also that the board can evaluate whether it's causing a detriment to the neighbors. And it brings that case before the board rather than just letting it happen. And I think that's why we're here, and I think we've put forth good reasons that the board feels that they hopefully can grant this variance, provide relief so that we can do this project.
Thank you. Okay, and nobody from the public has any statements to make? Okay, so it's our turn now to ask each other questions or discuss or make statements about what we think about the application.
Well, I think it's a very well-presented case, and I think the fact that the architect looked at alternatives to try to find some way to comply with the 20-foot separation, and that there were, given the location of the garage, there was no place to put an addition that would meet what are really pretty minimal requirements from the homeowners. There was no way to meet that on this site, given the location of the garage, is pretty compelling. And I think the solution that they're proposing has minimal, if any, impact on the neighbors, no negative impact, and it does all the positive things that the architect testified to.
I wanted to address, for the record, I think it's important to distinguish between a C1 and a C2 variance. A C1 variance is based upon peculiar and exceptional difficulties to the development of the lot based upon the geography or the slope, some physical manifestation of the lot. I don't think that exists here. Hardship is not personal hardship, personal circumstances. That doesn't qualify. On the other hand, I think this is a good case for a C2 variance in that one of the municipal land use laws is to improve the character of the neighborhood and to improve properties. And this does this, and it makes the house more valuable. It makes it more valuable not just for the Perlmans, which it does, and I understand your circumstances, but your circumstances are such that it could be kind of generic, that it's not just peculiar to you. So it fits in that sense. It's a better, this deviation from the ordinance makes this a more valuable property. And I think as far as the negative criteria, the only variance that's required is this violation of the 20-foot distance between accessory structures. There is no variance, for example, of lot coverage, no variance of setback or of height, which I think are more important. I'm still not convinced that we know absolutely the provenance of this ordinance, but we have evidence from the fire marshal who doesn't have a problem with it. I want to thank Mr. Rinda and Ms. Davis for pursuing that. And I don't see this squeezed distance here as affecting the neighbors at all. So I think the negative criteria are very minimal.
I would agree with most of what you just said there, Mr. Chairman, with the exception of whether or not it's C1 or C2 eligible. I actually had the inverse kind of reaction to this. I think that the fact that this is a narrow lot that's previously developed with the garage in the back, that really prohibits the placement of additional square footage is in fact the variance here, the hardship that exists. I think it would be an undue requirement to ask them to move their garage so that they could add square footage to their house. And they certainly don't have a coverage problem. And there, as you said, that there's really no impact to the neighbors of this addition being where it's located, really adjacent to a paved driveway and another garage. Doesn't have any adverse impact to the immediate neighbors. I don't think that it really has a significant or meaningful benefit to the neighborhood. It has a benefit to this particular property, and I think that its value is it stands on its own in that regard. I think this is a good use of the space. It's not creating a McMansion. It's not bulky. It's not tall. This is something that I think is a well thought out use of this space. I could support.
Have other comments, questions?
I also appreciated the presentation of the application. I think it was well presented, and I feel very comfortable that we've had a strong review. Another factor that I noted as encouraging me to support is that there's only that 8-foot requirement between two primaries buildings on two different lots, and therefore this 9 feet plus seems to meet other areas of separation that the town supports. So that's another factor that I note.
Yeah, I would also add, and I appreciate your bringing that up, the spacing of the garage with the addition is oriented in such a way that there really is, there's no blocking of getting to the garage or to the roof of the addition, the way that it's laid out. And so I think that the intent, if it's related to being able to gain access for fire safety purposes, it's not an issue. And I think that's supported by the letter from the fire marshal.
So may we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve this application as it stands. I don't think we have any conditions on it.
I'll second.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Fontana?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Semper?
Yes.
Mr. Adler?
No.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes.
And Ms. Rowland?
Yes.
All right. You have it. Good luck.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, are there, I'm trying to think, are there other bits of business? December is going to be a busy month. We have 108 and 109, and then we're going to have Seton Hall after that.
Not sure. Seton Hall's expecting to be here to start the case.
Right now, they're expecting to.
December,
They would only get started, obviously. We won't get to the bottom of theirs. I'm hoping that we can proceed through 108 relatively quickly, or the other one might be a little bit longer, so we'll see what Seton Hall has to say. And then maybe Fairview will show up. Oh, no, they're coming back in January. So we've got at least 3 at this point. And we have no completeness hearings yet? Okay. Anything else? Okay. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.